Hey everybody, this is Mike. Welcome back to the Z Motorsports shop and channel. Over on Garage Journal, where I'm quite active, there's been quite a few questions about the process that I use to do a paint correction, or after a paint job, how I go about cutting and buffing and to really get that showroom or that show quality shine. Now, I've tried to answer them the best I could over there, but I figured I posed the question if anybody was interested in a video, and there was quite a few people wanting me to do a video, so I'm going to go ahead and do a video on it. Now, I go into great detail on this because it's not rocket science, but it's important that you understand the why behind what you're doing. So right now all over the internet is the popularity of the one-step paint correction. I'm not a big fan of the one-step. Here's my reasoning. You're asking one product, one compound basically, and one pad to do everything, and it's not possible. The way I get after, I've been using the 3M process for, since the early mid-'80s when I first picked up a gun and started painting. Whether you're removing 1,500 grit scratches from color sanding, or you're coming in and removing really fine micro scratches from daily driving, car wash, so forth. One product, you're asking one compound, a DA polisher, which isn't going to get aggressive enough, and one pad to do everything. And in my opinion, it's not possible. I use 3 compounds, 3 different pads, 3 different steps to get the results that I'm after. The first one is aggressive. It's a compound. It's not a polishing glaze. It is a cutting compound. It is made to remove 12 to 1,500 grit sand scratches or micro scratches. And when you're getting on it, when you're aggressive with that orbital polisher, you're putting heavy swirl marks in that clear. And that's actually, the swirl marks are from the compound in the pad, but it's digging down and biting into that clear and getting those scratches out. Then the next step, then you wipe it all down, and the next step is the next step finer to remove those polishing swirl marks, polishing scratches from that compound with a finer pad, finer compound. Then the third step is finer yet to put that really depth and color, really bring the clarity out in it, and using a finer pad, in this case it could be a foam pad, and a finer polish. So that's really, in my opinion, the only way you're really going to get 90 to 100% of those scratches out of there. I've heard people say with doing the one step with the DA type sanders, they get 60-70% of the scratches out. And that's okay if you want to put forth that kind of effort and be happy with 60-70% of the scratches gone. Knock yourselves out, that's great. You're not going to get as good a job as if you really get aggressive and then move finer and finer products, finer and finer pads. So bear with me. I go into a lot of detail on that, but the results are well worth it. This is not rocket science. Anybody can do this. I just want to see that people do it correctly, pay attention to a few things, don't burn the paint, and can stand back and look at the finished product after and be proud of it. So let's move over and let's start off with the products and the tools. So I'm going to start off by introducing the supplies and tools that I use to polish out a vehicle. Now, before we get too in depth, there's terms that kind of are general terms that people use. There's one called cut and buff, cut and polish. In my opinion, anytime you're referring to the term cutting, you're actually using abrasives, meaning sandpaper, not compounds. So I have various grits from 1,000 to 1,200, 15, 2,000 that I will color sand. Like after I've sprayed a vehicle, on one I'm just doing a paint correction on. After cleaning it, clay barring it, I will go through and take pieces of tape and mark areas, if there's any, that I need to go in with some 2,000 wet paper and knock a stain, something that didn't come off in the clay bar process. But other than that, on a paint correction, I generally don't go after it with sandpaper. The caveat there is it depends on if it's one that I sprayed or if it's a factory finish or one that I'm just not familiar with. I know how I put clear coat on. I'm a hoser, so I lay clear coat down pretty heavy, so I have a good feel when I'm working the machine. I have a good, and sandpaper, I have a good feel for kind of what the limits are and how far I can push it. On a factory finish or one that I did not spray, I'm much more conservative on how I approach the surface on that vehicle. Now, let me get started to say I'm kind of old school. I started painting back in the 80s in high school, and I'm self-taught. I'm not, there's professionals out there that have gone to school and everything else on this. That's not me. I'm self-taught. I've kind of fine-tuned my skills over the years. Painting is not something I do a lot now, but when we had our speed shop, our performance shop, it was a service that I offered to the clients, and it was a way of just keeping more of the revenue, more control over things in-house. So I did everything from the sheet metal, the fabrication, everything up through prep, primer, bodywork, paint, clear, to handing the owner back the keys. And that way I could control more variables than having vehicles go to the various shops. The only thing I never did in our when we had our shop was upholstery. I've got a good upholsterer that I use. He's good at it. I trust him. I'm not an upholsterer. So other than that, so like I say, some of the chemicals, some of the things I'm using here are kind of old school. I know there's new technology out there. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I don't do it enough to really call myself proficient with the newer stuff. This system works for me. It has for 35 plus years. I've won several Best Paint and People's Choice Awards at various shows with some of my street rods and Harleys and bikes and various items that I built for myself and for clients. So I know this system works, and I just kind of don't fix it if it don't. I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. I know this system works. These chemicals work, these pads work, these machines work, and I just stick with it. I don't do it enough, like I said, to really start changing how I do things. Before I get too far along the tools, now, I'm old school. I've got this old, and this thing's probably 25 plus years old. This is an old Black & Decker heavy duty, I think it's called a Buffmaster. I love this thing. It's got a cast aluminum head, it's composite body, it's variable speed. With urethane paints, it's a balancing act. You have to generate enough heat to get the clear to kind of move around a little bit and to be able to bring those scratches out. But if you put too much heat into it, you'll burn through. I think that's why the DA sanders for the hobbyists are really catching on over the years, because it's hard. It's hard to screw something up with one of those, the DA polishers. I'm not taking anything away from them. It's just they take a little longer to do the same thing with just an orbital polisher and more aggressive compounds. So I also am not a big fan of battery or cordless tools. Anybody who follows me over on Garage Journal kind of knows that I like my pneumatic tools. I like my electric tools. I do have a few cordless tools, a couple impacts and some ratchets and a few things, but the bulk of my tools are pneumatic or electric. I like them because you don't have to keep buying batteries, you don't have to charge them. You plug them in, you hook them up to air, they work. So again, old school, but it works. However, last year I caved to some peer pressures over on Garage Journal, and I decided to try the Milwaukee polisher, battery-powered polisher at 18-volt fuel. And I'm not going to lie, it is nice. It's well balanced. I like that they did their homework. I like the fact that they tipped the battery connection point so that with a battery in there, it angles it enough to where when you're utilizing it, the battery stays up off the surface of the finish a good couple inches, so you're less likely to ding it into the paint that you're trying to polish out. For light duty work, I like it. I have used it since for polishing a few scratches out of my Jeep and my Duramax here a little bit. But for really getting after it and going to polish out scratches and swirls and everything, in my opinion, it just doesn't have it. We did a paint correction on my son's truck, repainted the roof, tops of the doors, and I went through and really got after it and polished that thing out, and this thing just didn't get it. I mean, I think it'd be good for, like I said, for light duty stuff, or maybe even the finish pass. But I burned through so many batteries on that thing, and when you try to really get after it, because like I said, I'm not afraid to lean on these things and get them to cut. It's a balancing act. You want to get enough heat into them to get the clear to do what you want, but not too much. And so you can either fiddle fart around with something lighter duty like this, or the dual action polishers, and bring the heat on slow, and a lot of it, or you can just get after it, get in and get out, use a coarse compound, cut it, and don't be afraid to lean on the polisher and get out of it. You're still generating that heat, but you're in and out quicker. So that's kind of the process I'm after, or the process I utilize. Now, I use a standard white wool. I know foam's come a long ways. Now, I do use the foam on the final, but I use a white wool with 3M's 6085 cutting compound. That's my first step. The next step, I go to a yellow wool polishing pad, and I use the Finesset 6094, which is the second step in the process. And then the final one is I will go to the Perfectit 6068. Now this is where I just recently varied a little bit. I've always used the black 5738 pad, but I have heard some good things about this 5733, the blue. They say it's a little finer. I'm going to give that a try. If not, I will go back to the black. But the black is the one I've used for probably 20, 25 years. Foam. That was the first foam pad I ever tried, and I just kind of stuck with it. The other two I use are wool, and I really like them because you can get after it, cut, and then the yellow one comes in step number 2 and removes the swirl marks, or excuse me, the scratches from the first step, leaves a few swirl marks, and then the third step comes through and knocks those swirl marks out, and just leaves a really deep shine. 3M used to make a product called Imperial Hand Glaze. That's what I use in my street rods, my show cars, my bikes, all that stuff. Right before we go to a show, I'd give everything a hand application of hand glaze, and it beaded water a little bit, but it wasn't necessarily a wax. It was just that, a hand glaze. I have had a harder time finding it. So here, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, I switched over to the Meguiar's number 7, and I feel it does, I can't really tell a difference. I feel like it does every bit as good a job. It's the Meguiar's show car glaze. So it does say it's a favorite hand-applied glaze, and I would say I would put this up against the Imperial Hand Glaze of 3M. The 3M one was my favorite one. So now another thing that's imperative is between the steps, make sure that you're going over and cleaning them so that you don't transfer a coarser compound and debris to a finer step. Hope that makes sense. So once I go through and do part of a car with step number 1, I will come through with and I use the same microfiber towels, so I don't mix them up either. I'll come through and wipe everything down, get all the compound off of there, especially like in the edges and everything. And then I will go to step number 2 with the yellow pad, do the same thing, polish it all out, get all the scratches and the haze out of it, and it really starts bringing that depth on with step number 2. And then I've got a separate microfiber towel, and then I'll go to step number 3 and do the same thing. So that's the main process there. Now, also, I'm going to turn the camera here and show you a couple things that I've also tried here over the last little bit. All right, so in addition to the Milwaukee battery-powered 7-inch, I also got this little 12 mini. This works really good for getting around mirrors, trim, headlight bezels, all those little areas that the other is just too big to get into. This, you can screw the handle on or off. It's a sander or a polisher. I haven't used it as a sander, to be honest with you. I just use it as a polisher. It takes the little Velcro, and I still, same thing. The white for step number 1, the yellow for step number 2, and then the black foam for the step number 3. I use the same compounds with the same pads, but boy, this is so nice to get in and go around little fine areas, and I'll usually go in and do those first, and then I come in with the bigger one and kind of blend into those. So that way I'm not creating like a halo, if you will, around whatever it is you're working on. So I did pick that up, and I actually like this more so than this, just because I can't get after it enough with this. That one will actually, this one here will actually stall out, where when I put compound down and I start working it, like I said, I'm not afraid to lean on it and really get in there and get it to bite and dig, and this thing will actually stall out, whereas the Black & Decker Buffmaster, man, that thing will you can just feel the torque in it, and it just gets it. It'll get right after it. The other thing I did use here a little bit, I bought this mainly to use on our coach. Had some water spots and a few things like that, but I really didn't want to go in and start getting after it too aggressively with compound and so forth. And so I couldn't knock the DA polishers unless I actually tried one. So I bought the Griot's DA dual action polisher, and I've used it on our coach on the big flat surfaces, and I actually, for what it is, I like it. I use a Meguiar's number 2 if I'm just going in and doing a quick polish job on it, and then I'll use the hand glaze or this number 26 high-tech yellow wax, and this has Carnauba wax in it, so that's why I kind of use it, and it beads water up really nice. So I have used that on the coach. I do like this. It's different because with the big polishers, you're not always flat. You're kind of at a little bit of a lead in when you're polishing, and it's kind of coming across and cutting at an approach angle and then coming off the paint, whereas with this, it's a different mindset. You're actually putting it flat on the paint and you're moving through it. Like I said, for what it is, it works good. It's just not aggressive enough for really getting in there and removing scratches to the degree that I want to get in there and remove scratches. So I do use it, and I have red pads here for the wax, and then I've got a black and a gray and a yellow, depending on how aggressive I want it. But this fine cut cleaner works decent. It's a nice compromise between a polish and a cutting compound. So it does work well in that application, and then I'll switch pads and come back through with a wax. This works really good for putting waxes on. So maybe that's why I like it so much for the motorhome, is because I use it more in a wax application. And that's pretty much it as far as tools that I use. I almost forgot. I do use clay bar. I will use clay bar. My other one was getting pretty contaminated. I've used it for a few years, and it's been getting kind of contaminated, and I was out of the lubricant, and I got a deal on this, so I decided to try it. Generally for lubricant, I'll just mix up some Dawn dish soap in a spray bottle, but this was a pretty decent deal, so I just went ahead and picked it up. I do like the Mother's clay bars. I've used those, and I've used the Griot's. I do like the Mother's, probably, I don't know, maybe a little better. I don't know, maybe it's just the consistency of them, I guess, I don't know. So I do like that. The other thing that I am sold on, that I buy this by the gallons, and then I just transfer it into the smaller bottles. This is Meguiar's number 34. It's called Final Inspection. Now, my son likes one by Lucas called Fast Mist or Fast, don't quote me on that, Fast Mist or Fast Spray, Fast Detailer, something like that. He likes the smell of it. Personally, I don't care for the smell of it, but I use this stuff. Like I said, I buy it by the gallons, And I usually keep 2 bottles of it handy. When we go to car shows, this is all I'd take, and a microfiber towel and my California duster. And when we go to car shows, I detail it with this, and then a lot of times outdoor car shows especially, you get a little layer of dust by midday, and just run the California duster over it, take the dust off. It lifts it up and away from the surface of the paint. And then anywhere else, like if somebody comes by and puts a fingerprint or something on the car, this final inspection works really good on that. The other place I use final inspection is when we were racing sand quads and snowmobiles. A lot of them had chrome pipes, and if you put your fingers, just because your body naturally excretes oils, and you could walk up and touch a chrome pipe, and as much as we were tuning and tweaking on clutches and carbs and all that stuff, it was inevitable you were going to touch a pipe. I would grab a bottle of this and go through and wipe the chrome pipes off before we fired them, because if you put any fingerprints on those chrome pipes and then fire them up and put heat in them, the oils from your fingers will burn, and you'll see those fingerprints transfer through and start yellowing on the chrome of the pipes. So I really like this final inspection. I've used this I got hooked on this when I was selling paint and body supplies right out of high school. So I've been using this for 35 plus years now. So it's great for a detailer. I'll hurry and walk around. Sometimes I'll walk around the car with this before the wife and I hop in and go for a ride or go for a drive. I did the same thing on the Harley. I'd hit it, takes bugs off the front pretty decent. So I just kind of hit the fairing and the areas, the saddlebags and everything before we go for a ride. And it's a nice quick detailer. Okay, so now that we've gone over the tools and supplies used for this, we'll commence the actual process. Now, the main thing is before you start, make sure your surface is clean. Dirt, even small dust particles, a layer of dust, is going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to do, because as you're trying to polish it out, those fine particles of dirt and dust are actually like grit, and they're actually going in and cutting and scratching into the clear coat. So a good old-fashioned hand washing and drying, or in this case, I've had the cover on this for, most of the winter, so I just pulled the cover off and I went around everything with the 34 Meguiar's final inspection, give everything a thorough cleaning so that the surface is clean. And this is the part where you're going to start seeing the progression. So I don't know where I bought this car used. I don't know the history of it. By looking at the surface, I'm going to say the owner didn't beat on it. He didn't abuse it. He used it. I believe it was more than just a weekend toy, but at 10 years old and 62,000 miles, it has some scratches. It has a few. If you catch it just right in the light, you can see some like acid raindrops, or even, I hate to say it, even secondary water from a sprinkler system has heavy deposits on it. So those are what I'm going to be trying to remove. Orange peel on this car is very minimal. On some manufacturers, some models even, you'll see a little more texture in the finish, and that's I shouldn't say by design. It's just the way it comes out through the paint process. On some of the more upper models, the Corvettes, the Cadillacs, in the GM line, you'll see a little nicer finish. This actually has a very nice finish. This crystal red tint coat color is one of my favorites. It really pops in the sun, and even under artificial lighting, it really gives off a nice glow to it. Now, looking at it, there's not a lot of orange peel, so the key there is if you need to sand in an area to remove some deeper scratches or anything, you want to be cognitive of that, because if you flatten that surface out to perfection, and then you have two panels adjacent to it that have a slight amount of orange peel, to the trained eye, you will see that difference. So when you're color sanding an area, you want to make sure that you kind of keep the finish matching the surrounding body panels. So keep that in mind. Don't just go in and go haphazardly at it and then go, oh, I've got a little bit of orange peel here, a little bit of orange peel here. This is a mirror. So you want to be You want to be aware of that. So you want to keep those surfaces matching. This has a very, very minimal, if any, of that orange peel. So I know I've got a little bit more leeway. But that being said, I've got a couple little spots here that I can't tell if it's tree sap or what it is. I do know I have a scratch here, like a rock come up and skipped across the hood and took a pretty good little chunk of clear. Now that bothers me. The downside to that is in order to get rid of this, I'm painting at least half the hood to blend this. This is a tri-coat color, so I would be painting the front bumper, the left front fender, this section of the hood, at least up to this, where this transition is, and then clearing all three of these components, the bumper cover, the fender, and the hood. That's a shit ton of work for a little scratch. And the sad thing is 6 days, 6 months, 6,000 miles down the road, I could have something worse over here. So unfortunately, with buying a used car that you plan on driving, I'm gonna leave that for a little bit. I will take a little bit of clear and touch that up a little bit, and then maybe polish that in, but to minimize that, because it looks like it just scraped the clear. It doesn't look like it got down to metal, to primer or metal. So you kind of have to weigh what you can live with, what you can't. As I was going over this with final inspection, there were some areas that I noticed that had a little bit of, like I said, either acid rain or water deposit, something. And it seemed to be more on this side of the hood and a little bit across the front edge of the fender here and on the deck lid, the trunk lid. So those are the areas I'm going to pay particular attention to with the clay bar. So now that everything's clean, I'm going to take the clay bar and basically this is just they call it an instant detailer, but you can use anything that you just basically want to lubricate a little bit. You don't want to drag this along dry clear coat. You want to create a barrier, a lubricant for this to float and remove any of those imperfections or any of those contaminants, if you will, off of that paint surface. Now I've donned my splatter apron, so I took my good one out. Make sure you don't have anything sharp in any of your pockets because you are going to be leaning across, so be cognitive of that. And in the clay bar, you're just running, and it doesn't matter where you start. I like to do half of a panel or something to where I can kind of use that as a gauge or a guide. Now you can actually add some really fine micro scratches in the paint in the surface, because as you're picking up those contaminants, you're going to be there. See, you can actually feel. I felt something right there as I was coming across this quadrant of the hood. And now I don't. So whatever that was, whether it be, fly shit, acid rain, tree sap is a common one. Tree sap. There's a phenomenon called rail dust that when you're around train tracks, as the train wheels are coming across the tracks, they wear the rails and the wheels slightly, and this rail dust, if you will, gets up and floats around and settles onto cars. Where I work is near a railway, so my white Duramax, I tend to pick up a little bit of rail dust throughout the years when I drive that, and so I will clay bar the flat surfaces on that and polish them out every couple of years. It's because that rail dust does get, and you can actually, on lighter color vehicles, more prevalent, but you can see little rust specks, and you're thinking, oh shit, I got rust on the panel's rusting. It's actually that rail dust settling down into the microscopic pores, because your paint is actually quite porous. That's what allows it to breathe. But it can get down in those pores, and then rain falls, obviously, and it creates rust. But you'll have these little rust specks, and you'll be thinking, what is that? How in the heck is that rusting from the outside? Well, more than likely, that's a form of rail rail dust that's settling on your paint, and that rust is from the outside going down into the pores, not necessarily the metal coming up. So keep that in mind. And like I said, now I've gone over this area here. I've done about a quarter of the hood here. Whoop, I just felt another little spot right there. And now it's smooth again. You can tell as soon as you remove whatever it is, it'll glide right over. And the key there is to keep turning and kneading the clay bar back into itself, so you're not just taking those contaminants and just transferring them or scratching the remaining surface. So once you have an area done, go ahead and give it a drying. And you can use, like I said, you can use a fine paper towel, microfiber towel. The main thing is you don't want to put any more scratches into the surface than you have to, because that's what you're trying to remove with the next step. But with the clay bar, it's not guaranteed you're not going to put a few scratches here and there in it, but that's just the beginning process of the next step. So at this point, I've got the whole car, or I've got the surfaces that I wanted to clay barred, so we are ready to start compounding. Now, some people will clay bar every single painted surface of the car. Other people will skip the clay bar process, and maybe just if they notice anything, they'll remove that. I'm kind of in the middle. I will clay bar all of the flat surfaces, so like the roof, the hood, the trunk lid, the tops of the mirrors, the A-pillar, B-pillar, the tops of the rear quarters, even the tops of the flares here. The vertical surfaces, when I'm doing the detailing initially, I will just take pieces of tape and stick around the car, and anything that jumps out at me as I'm cleaning it, I clay bar those areas. So I'm kind of in the middle. I don't necessarily clay bar every inch of it, but I do hit the tops and anywhere else I notice it needs it. So there's a couple of different camps there. Now, I won't clay bar a fresh paint job, obviously, that I've just done, but on one like this that's got some miles and some years on it, I do hit the flat surfaces. Now, that being said, I go one step further, and this is totally optional. You don't have to do this. I go one step further, and I tape up as many of these seams around trims and moldings that I can to avoid the splatter getting stuck and actually kind of packed in there. The underside of the hood, so that way as the wheel of the buffer is coming across, it's coming over the edge. Any of the big gaps. Now, I don't go to the point of taping it like I would if I was painting it, where you're trying to get everything down in. I actually do this the opposite. I will actually hug the tape, because if you notice this this goes up, rolls over the edge, and then goes down lower than where the glass sits. So I will actually hug the tape a little bit further this way, so the tape comes over and rolls up under this ledge. So it sounds like it takes more time than it does. It only took me maybe 15 minutes to mask this up. Like I said, I just basically, if there's the buffers coming across this, I don't want the splatter getting packed down in, and especially any of this textured black plastic trim, or the black trim moldings, the belt line moldings. Anybody who's gotten compounding splatter on any of that plastic knows what a pain it is to remove. So to me, it's worth taking a few minutes, running some masking tape around. Again, same thing here. The tape is up under that edge, but it's not like if I was painting it and I'd want all that paint to go back down in behind. Well, actually, if it was me painting this, all the trim and moldings and everything would be off the car, so that's not really a fair comparison. But just think, wherever you don't want the splatter, kind of try to tape it off if you choose to go this option. Same thing with the moldings. Now some people I'm usually a big fan of debadging cars. However, I do kind of like this Camaro emblem. I waffled on this, on removing this emblem on any of my vehicles, our Coach, my Duramax, my Jeep. I've removed all my emblems, decals, anything. I like that clean, unadulterated look. But I really waffled on this because I figured if I'm going to pull it, now's the time to do it. and go over and polish all this where the double-sided tape was. However, I do kind of like that Camaro badging, and I'm trying to keep this with the factory look. So someday I'll be able to hand this down to either son or grandson, and you know, and it'll be as clean and as clean as I can leave it. Let's put it that way. So I opted to leave these emblems on. The other thing I'll do is when I come back into the door handles, I will take my small detailer and I'm gonna mask around here, and I'll hit the door handles, basically just the top and the front real briefly. Then I'll mask the door handle off, so when I come in here and polish this, I don't get compounding stuck up and around those door handles. Now, let's talk edges. Some people will tape edges, and for beginners, I recommend that. So if I was saying, if you're gonna be polishing this edge, or the hood here, tape this fender, or vice versa. If you're gonna be doing this, tape the other. I've been doing it long enough where I kind of have a feel. I'm still cautious of it, but I have a good feel for it. Now, one thing I will say, well, actually I'm gonna say two things about edges. Number one, as the buffing wheel is coming around, never, ever, ever cut going on to an edge. Always let that, so you're gonna tip your polisher to where the buffing wheel comes off the edge over it, never going on, dig it into it. That's where you're gonna burn your edge right there, and take that clear and paint right off, and you'll be down to primer or worse metal. So always come off an edge. The other thing I wanna say about edges, don't concentrate on them. They get enough by accident. Don't really focus on the edge, because out here, you've got heat you're putting into this whole area out here. When you start coming into an edge, there's nowhere else for that heat to go, and so all that heat is concentrating on that edge. So remember I said earlier about urethane, it's a balancing act between creating enough heat to get the clear to do what you want and to be able to remove those scratches, but not so much that you're actually creating enough heat to damage the clear. So don't cut going on, and don't concentrate. They get enough by accident. So I've popped the hood up a little bit here, so as I come through and polish this, it'll be coming off. Now back here at the back corner, where it's pretty much, about right here, is where you can feel a distinct raise in the hood versus the fender. This area back here, you could mask that off, but I will be very cautious and hit that very lightly. Again, all this other area, catch the buffer coming off. Same thing here. Here, you'd probably want to catch the buffer coming off this direction, and then switch and turn the wheel coming off, or not turn the wheel, but turn the buffer so the wheel's coming off the other edge, because there is there's slightly two different planes here. This isn't flat, and it's not a definitive edge. It's a radius, but there is two different planes there, so you have that option. Now don't focus on this peak. This peak is somewhat defined in there, but don't concentrate on that, because if you're hitting here and here, you're gonna be removing more off that peak. So kind of hit it this way and then this way, so you're coming up to that peak. Hope that makes sense. I covered a lot right there. Other areas like the mail slot I've taped off because that's black plastic and I really don't want compound getting plastered into there. Now, this big surface area here, I will probably use my big polisher. When I get down into the area here, I'll probably use my small detailer, and then the flat surface here on the front, I will more than likely switch back over to the large one. Oh, I forgot to mask off the plastic around the license plate, so I need to get that yet. The area, and I'll probably run a piece probably around there. So anyway, I'm gonna show you the hood. I'm gonna start the hood, and I'll show the hood being through the process, probably one half of it maybe, and then kind of show you a comparison. There's decent light here coming in this morning, so we'll do one half. I'm not gonna run a masking paper down, or masking tape down the edge like you see in some videos. I'm just gonna polish this side, so it might not be a straight line with the polisher, but I'm gonna show this half, and then to be honest with you, I'm not gonna show the rest of it because I kind of like to just crank up the tunes and get into a rhythm. So if you see one section of the hood, you're gonna know how I attack the rest of the car. So you'll know what it's like. And then if I see anything of points of interest or anything as I'm going around the car, I'll fire the camera back up. But other than that, what you see on this side of the hood is going to be the way the rest of the car is done. Okay, so I hope that shows up good. I tried to shoot right down the center of the hood. First thing is make sure your compound is mixed well, because they will try to separate when they sit on the shelves and whatnot. So you want the grit from the compounds evenly dispersed throughout the liquid or the carrier, if you will. The other thing is, if it's a new pad or a used pad, I like to perform the same treatment to it, and that is take a star wheel. I've used a screwdriver blade, something, but make sure you remove any previous residue, and it also opens up the wool to allows it to accept fresh compound. So this can get kind of a little bit messy. So I'm a little aggressive with the star wheel. I will get in there and actually kind of force it back in to bite in and really dig and clean those fibers out. I do that same thing on a new pad with the intent of removing any fibers that are not solidly wound or bound. If they're not gonna stick with you, if they're not gonna stick and hang in there during the process, I want them out of there. So yeah, you can tell now that back of your hand, you can feel that's really fluffed up nice. It's ready to accept. Ready to accept the compound. Now on big flat surfaces like this, I will run it a little. I've got a variable bus speed buffer here. My preferred speeds are about in the 12 to 1400 range. On a big flat hood like this, where, remember we're talking about heat. So on a big flat hood like this, I'll be upwards around 1400 RPM. As I get into this area along the front bumper here, the front cowling, the fender tops, I'll probably turn it down to around 1200, 1150, 1200, somewhere around there. So again, be mindful of your tools and equipment versus what you're doing. If you're seeing something while you're doing, don't keep going. Stop, figure out what you're doing wrong or what you need to tweak. Otherwise, you're gonna create more damage. Now, this is where I mentioned earlier, the DA style of polisher. You could probably have at this all day long and not damage the surface, but you're gonna be there a little longer. You'll be making multiple passes, and you'll see with a buffer like this how fast this process goes, because you're getting in, you're creating that heat, you're cutting that, or compounding, and you're actually cutting that top surface of the clear, and you're getting back out. So then I take and put some of the compound onto the pad. I just usually put a couple of quarter size dabs on there. I throw the cord over my shoulder and down my back so it does not drag across the surface here that you're trying to protect. Then I'll come in and just kind of smear it around a little bit before I ever squeeze the trigger. Now when you squeeze the trigger, it's going to swing a little bit. Okay, so clean off the splatter from that step and evaluate it and see if there's anywhere I missed or anywhere I need to hit again. And I can tell you already, the fine scratches from normal wear and tear seem to be almost gone. Maybe a few right here yet, but up on top here are gone. I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera, but what you can still see, and you're going to, is the finer scratches or swirl marks, if you will, from that compounding step. And I do have one scratch that I can see goes from about here to there that is not quite, and it goes straight up the hood. So I don't know if he went through one of those car washes that have the slats that come up, or if that is a rock that went up. I don't think it's a rock because it's too consistent. Maybe I don't know, maybe one of those brushes or something, I don't know, but it's too straight. It's just this side by about 6 inches of the center line. Again, I don't know if that's going to show up, but I'm going to hit that area right there a little bit more. And then this area here looks really good. I got something right there that I can see in my light still. So I'll hit that area, this area, and then I left off about in here. I'll continue out, and then I'll move down to the front part of the hood with this step. So again, we're going to put a few quarter-size spots on the pad. Throw the cord over your shoulder, let it drape down your back. And I'm pushing on it pretty good, and I can feel it biting. Now when I'm running back and forth down the handle, I've actually got my hand cupped over the edge there, so that black plastic handle does not touch the paint. I can feel my knuckle, the back of my hand, touch the paint every once in a while, but just be aware of where your points are that can touch. So again, I'm cupping the handle, I'm coming down that edge. And I don't know if you can hear the tone change, but as I'm coming down, I'm pushing, and that wheel is digging in. That's where this buffer really shines over the cordless. Sorry, I hope you could hear that. I was really getting aggressive on pushing that, but my scratch is gone. That scratch is gone. So that was what it needed right there. So that's where this corded buffer really shines over the cordless, because I would probably have stalled that Black & Decker one out right there. Or not the Black & Decker, the Milwaukee cordless. So, okay, this area, beautiful. Some really fine microfiber scratches from the compound. But my scratch, hell, I can't even tell where that scratch was actually. It was about 6 inches off the center line. I can't see any trace of that. So, and we're good. I mean, that edge right there you saw, I wasn't concentrating on it. I was actually staying back a good inch or so, and then I just kind of lightly go to the edge, basically just kind of to knock that compound off the edge. So like I said, it gets enough by accident. Don't focus on it. This edge through here, same way. So now I'm going to hit this, and then I'll come around to the front. Actually, I got quite a bit of compound on it, so I'll give that a good wiping and continue on. Okay. Oh, that looks beautiful. Like I said, I love this crystal red tint coat. I believe on the Corvettes they may call it a crystal red claret or crystal claret. I can't remember for sure. I'm not a Corvette guy, but I think they call it something different, but it's the same WA 505Q GM paint code. Or I can't remember what the RPO is. 89? AO89, I believe it is. Don't quote me on that. It's crystal red tint coat as far as I'm concerned. My wife likes it because her name's Crystal, and it's crystal red tint coat, so she thinks I named it after her, and that's good enough for me. I can see the lights perfectly in it, even the individual LEDs. My Screamin' Eagle Racing and Harley Davidson banners, you can read them crystal clear in the hood. Again, I don't think this is going to show up as good on camera as it is here. Now, I do have, similar to up here in the hood, I do have a little scratch right there. So this one's about 6 inches off of that body line. There's my chip in the clear. Again, there's not much I can do about that, but I am going to come in here. I've got to get this section right here. I'll come in and get that scratch right there at the same time. Okay. And again, I'm leaning on it. I'm putting some pressure on it. Don't do that if you don't feel comfortable with what you're doing, because I'm really making it bite in, but I'm getting in there and getting out quick. Okay. Wow, that just, again, this is not showing up on camera, but this half of the hood does not look like the same car. The fine scratches and everything are gone, other than just those little microfiber or micro scratches that are in there from the compound and the wool pad. The next step will take those right out. You can see some real fine swirl marks. This scratch is gone, but thought I saw one. Yep, I do see one right there. So I'm going to hit that area again before we move on. Again, make sure that every step you're doing, you're happy with before you move on, or you're going backwards. Oh man, that really, That is really... Man, my American flag up on the wall, my Camaro Heartbeat of America sign, I can see them. I can read them clean, or plain as day right there in the reflection. And I don't see any more of those small scratches. That one's gone. Okay, I think this half of the hood is ready to move on to the finesse step, step number 2. Okay, so same process. I've used the star wheel, or the spur, as my son used to call it, is the spur, because that's what it looks like. So got that. I've got a different, my number 2 microfiber towel, and I'm running the number 2 compound. This is the Finesse Set machine polish. And this is the one that'll basically take out swirl marks and those really, really fine micro scratches from the previous step. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing. Spread it around. A few more drops and just continue on. Let's go ahead and give that a good wiping. Wow, that now you don't see any of the swirl marks. And that depth and clarity really pops there. Wow. Okay, we'll continue on and get the front, and then this half of the hood is ready for step number 3, the final step. Wow. All right, that is really, really taking shape. If it wasn't for that little chip right there, I would be ecstatic over that finish. So let's get ready for the third step on this side. We're now to the third step of the three-step process. The only thing left after this will be a good wash job to get all the splatter off, and then I'll go over it with the hand glaze. Now this is where I generally use the black foam pad, and like the others, you want to make sure and clean the old off and prepare the surface for the new. For this, you don't want to use that spur, the star wheel. I just use an old hairbrush that's fairly stiff bristled, but you do the same thing. As this is spinning around on the polisher, you're just breathing across it, and it's removing any of the old dried up. And like I say, this is pretty soft still. So now, I am going to try the new blue 5733 on this one. I've read that the people are really liking this, along with the third step Perfecta, the 6068. I'm assuming so because this is a new bottle I use my old machine glaze, so this is the ultra fine machine polish 6068, and I just recently purchased this over the summer, over this last summer when I was doing my son's, and I noticed it comes with a blue lid, blue pad. I don't know. I know everybody's trying to color coordinate everything nowadays. I still go off of part numbers, but I am going to try this to just feel even a new black one to this blue one. I've over the bench, but you can feel a little difference. So I'm going to give this blue one a try. If I like it, great. I may have just found my new pad for the third and final step. If I don't like it, then I will very easily go back to the black. I have a couple of the blacks still. So same deal. Got the pads on the buffer. Now, a little bit of this goes a long ways, so I don't put on as much. Shake it up good because they do separate. So a little bit of this goes further, but seeing as how this is a new pad, I am going to put a little bit more on the first go round just to condition the pad. And actually, I'm going to go one step further and kind of massage, because this is a new pad, I'm going to massage it into the pad a little bit. And then put a little bit more on, more normally. Hell, even the polish, I forgot even the polish is blue. So, okay, let's give this pad a try, shall we? Now, I hope it shows up in the camera, but I really don't have any scratches. I don't have any swirl marks. I have a little hazing is all from step number 2, which is what this should remove. So far, I'm liking it. I mean, I like this. It's smooth, but then again, so is the black foam. Cord fell off my shoulder. And that splattered me right in the eyeball. Yeah, that splattered me right in the eyeball. All right, so now we'll just take and hit this with the microfiber towel. Wow, that is really popping. So the first step gets rid of the scratches. Second step gets rid of the swirl marks and the polishing scratches from the first step, and this puts that deep, oh wow, that puts that deep luster. That paint looks like it's a foot thick. I hope that's showing up. Just going to continue on. And like I said, a little bit of this goes a long ways. It really spreads out. Now lighten up. If you hear the tone change, I'm just floating the polisher across this top edge of that fender. I'm not pushing down on it. Now I'm pushing down on it a little bit again. I hope you can hear that tone change as I went from the top of the fender there back into the hood. And I do have blue compound down in that groove, so that's going to have to be washed and cleaned out really well. Stuff wants to smear just a little bit, so. All right, so, wow, that. Let me just get this front edge here, and then I'll give the whole thing a wipe down. Like I said, I put about five or six dime to nickel, probably nickel size dabs on there. And then smear it around good. Okay. Then I did switch over to a clean microfiber. That other one needs to be washed. I could tell it was starting to drag some stuff a little bit, so I did switch over to a new one, or a fresh, clean one, I should say. Wow, I can live with that. For a 10-year-old car, I can live with that. I think that would rival about anything coming off the lot today. Oops, a few little smears right there. I must have picked up something off the paper. Wow, you can see the wood grain even in the burn spots on my American flag and up on the wall. I can read the Camaro Heartbeat of America sign just perfectly in that reflection. So the only thing that's left on this side of the hood is the hand glaze, and that will be actually after it's washed, after the whole thing's done. So again, I hope it shows up on camera. I'll take the camera and kind of pan around it a little bit, see if you can see in the light what I'm seeing here. But I can definitely tell a distinct difference in the sides of the hood, just in the reflection from the lights. So the next thing is to go around the whole rest of the car, so probably another 8 to 10 hours worth of work here. So what I'll do is I'll do the other half of the hood, then I'll come around to the front valance bumper cover, and then I'll do the fenders. So basically from the windshield forward are done, and then I like to go back and do the deck lid and the rear quarters, and then I'll come together with the doors. Now, rather than stand up on a step stool for the roof, I will wait till the tires and wheels are back on, and then the hood should be right about where, the roof should be about where the hood is now. So that'll be nice and easy to get the roof and the A and B, or the A and C pillars, and that should pretty much finish it up. But I don't want to put my nice new chrome wheels on and have splatter all over them, so I will go ahead and do everything now while it's on jack stands without the tires and wheels on, except the roof and the A and C pillars. So we'll get that done, then I'll put tires and wheels back on, set it back down on the ground, do the roof. At that point I can hopefully, there'll be a couple of nights worth of work, but I can back it outside, give it a good hand wash job, chamois, clean it up really good, and do a hand glaze on it, and then she's ready to start knocking down some miles this summer. So I'm gonna stop here. You don't need to see me do the whole car. It's all basically done the same steps as this. All right, so I had some scratches in this corner right here of the front bumper cover where it meets the hood. So I closed the hood to where the hood now is on the same plane, and I had actually put a little bit of tape just right there on this curve, because where the pad is coming across that, I didn't want to risk it. But I got the top of the fender here, and you can see, boy, that is just, and this is only the first compounding stage, but you can see the lights. It's brought the shine back, and then like I said, right in through here I had some scratches, like kind of similar to the other side of the hood where there was some vertical scratches going up, or parallel scratches going up the hood. But those come out really good. I had to get a little aggressive on this area, and so there's a small ridge line right here, so I took the pad and come across that, so the pad was going up off of this ridge line and down off of this ridge line, and then I come across and just lightly breathed across here, and then I got into the mail slot, and man, the mail slot I had some really fine scratches here and here, and that mail slot turned out beautifully, as well as the area right above the mail slot. So I also hit this corner and down the front here, so I just have this section here to do on this side. But yeah, I just wanted to show the first compounding stage on that, and then this side of the hood has got the first stage of compound done on it. So there is the front clip done, all 3 steps. Man, this thing turned out good, if I do say so myself. The only thing I have is that little rock chip right up here in the front quadrant of the hood. Other than that, man, that thing's turned out good. So I got all 3 steps done, the compounding, the finesse it, and then the machine glaze. I had a ton of scratches right here I really had to get aggressive with, but man, even that area just turned out phenomenal. There's not a scratch one, like I said, other than that rock chip in this whole front clip. So that's about 5 hours worth of work, and I'm just barely a third of the way done with the car. So I hope this is really picking up because I don't know that the video or the pictures will even do this thing justice. So I've put the tires and wheels back on, set it down on the ground. There is the 3rd and final stage of polish on the rear quarter. I've painted a lot of candies in my day, a lot of House of Colors candies, that is. A little bit of the PPG line, but I tell you, that's about as close to a candy apple red without actually going into a candy that I think I've seen. That is a beautiful color. Kind of glad I stumbled across this one now. I was really leaning towards a black one, but black or silver or gray. But boy, I tell you, I'm really digging I'm really digging the color on this car, this crystal red tint coat. I know it'll be a pain in the ass to repair if it ever gets dinged up being a tri-coat. But man, I tell you, that just has so much depth and color and gloss to it. I love that. So I just have the roof to do, and the sunroof's 60% of that. So I just basically have around the top of the doors, on the roof side of the ditch, a little bit in the front, a little bit in the rear, and then the top of the doors here. And I forgot to get the mirrors, so I'll hit those, and then it's ready for a good wash job and get rid of all the splatter down in the seams and everything, the hood and door gaps. All 3 steps of polish are done. I got the roof and the doors done now, so there it is after a thorough wash job. I still have to open the doors and do the door jams and under the hood and the deck lid, but that is after, I'm thinking probably about 18 to 20 hours worth of work. 3-step polishing, good wash job. Man, that paint just pops. See the reflection of the clouds. It's a lot of work, but well worth the effort. Only thing that bugs me is that rock chip right there on the hood. Other than that, the paint is in really excellent condition now. Something that I'm proud to have in our stable. Well, that pretty much concludes the paint correction on our 2013 Camaro SS. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up, and welcome the comments. I hope you all are able to get out to your shops, garages, and be able to get your cars, hot rods, daily drivers, whatever the case may be, get them all ready for the summer months, and hopefully you have many happy miles in your cars this summer. Thank you for watching.